Hello, my name is Mark Thomas. I'm Helpline Manager for the Farming Community Network. And today it's my pleasure to speak with Sarah Hughes, who's a Nuffield Scholar and currently working with Syngenta Seeds. This interview is part of a joint initiative between FCN, Nuffield Farming Scholarships Trust, and Focus Farmers. And the aim is to help encourage people in the farming community to think about building resilience and to plan for the future. And today we're discussing diversification of the farm business. Sarah, thank you very much for joining us today and sparing some time for us. We really appreciate it. I hope the technology won't let us down, and hopefully the Amazon deliveries won't show up and set my dog off. But I guess those are hazards of our time. Perhaps we could start off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Certainly, thanks for inviting me, and likewise I'm noticing that door behind me, so if my husband walks in it's because he didn't read the sign. As you said, my name's Sarah Hughes. I'm a 2017 Nuffield Scholar. I did my Nuffield Scholarship on the economics of vertical farming, which sounds a little bit obscure for someone that lives on a sheep and beef farm in North Wales. But at the time I had an edible flower business and I was looking to expand that business and looking for new opportunities. And as you said, I'm currently working at Syngenta Seeds. So I've kind of done a big circle and gone back into a sector that I used to work in when I first joined the agricultural world, as it was.
Oh, okay. And what part of the world are we talking to you in today?
North Wales. So as I look out the window, I can see mountains, fog, and a little bit of snow on the top. So I think you'd call us technically a less favoured area and very much uplands. So yeah, but very far away from the arable world that I now work in.
I'm sure it's beautiful. I'm in North Hampshire today, and the photo behind me I thought was a little bit more interesting than my grubby walls. But as you can tell, that was taken on one of our local rights of way back in the summer. So it's a little bit different here today, looking out of the window. Okay, well, perhaps to start with, we're here to talk about diversification today, and perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what diversification has meant to you and to your family.
So I probably should say this right at the front. I feel sometimes a bit like a jack of all trades and master of none. So I have done a diversification business myself, which was the edible flower one, but the farm that I live on, my husband's family farm, are a diversified sheep and beef farm. And I would say that goes right back to the 1960s when my father-in-law started a tourism business. And that trend has really continued right up to the present day. So I'm kind of, by dint of living here, I've seen, tourism, diversification, renewable energy. We're also looking at increased productivity. And then I also really, through my work, I've worked on diversification projects looking at direct selling, mainly for red meat and that type of business. But, I would say I'm aware of a lot of diversification opportunities and perhaps where to get the information and some of the potential opportunities and challenges that people might face.
Thank you. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your own diversification projects. Vertical farming and edible flowers sound fascinating, but I think you've looked at other areas as well.
So from my background, as I said before, I'd come from an arable background, and when I moved to North Wales, that kind of world was quite limited. I also, we had a young family at the time. They're a bit older now, but from my point of view, I was really trying to find an opportunity that could allow me to be home-based really, but also create an income. So that's how I ended up starting the edible flower business. And it wasn't something I would say that I'd always had a burning desire for, but really, and I think the same with all diversification opportunities, I had to look at what skills I had, what kind of options I had where I lived, and also for me quite a big important thing was, you know, how much was it going to cost for me to set that business up. So it was a very low entry point, and it was something I could grow quite organically, and you know, ultimately it became a successful business. But I had to do quite a lot of research, and I did look at different things as well when I started that. And on my husband's family farm, the tourism business, as I said, started in the 1960s. And I think with all diversification, well, not all, but a lot of diversification, it's, you know, when change happens, or, you know, there's a reason. If you're making loads of money in farming, not many people think, oh, do you know what, let's go and do something else. You know, that's often not the kind of catalyst. So sometimes it's, you know, another family member comes into the business, or incomes have dropped. So I think over the years, how the family farmers looked at it is trying to look at those opportunities. So tourism in the 1960s, which has grown, and then more recently looking at the renewable energy, which again has been an opportunity that's happened over perhaps the last 10, 15 years. So on the farm, we've got an anaerobic digester, and we've got solar panels and ground source heat pumps, which is very much something my husband's driven, because that's his interest and expertise. I don't know whether we're going to try this, but I did have some pictures, but I'm not sure how successful my share screen will be.
Let's give it a go.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, there were about 100 pictures, so whether anyone can actually see it, right,
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, get something other to look at. So tell me, I don't know whether you can see that. I'll try and put it on slideshow. Do you think that's working? Perhaps we probably don't know, but let's assume that it is working.
Yeah.
So I just, apologies, they are all a bit random. I took them off our Twitter account. So it was really to try and show the diversity of our diversification on the farm. So there's the anaerobic digester, there's our caravan park, and also something else that we've gone into over the last couple of years is really trying to improve productivity. And one of the key areas we've done that is through rotational grazing. So trying to get more from what we've got. And I don't know if you can see that bottom left-hand one, things like EID tagging. So actually being able to measure where we are and then measure whether we're improving or not. Sorry, I may have gone a bit off subject there, Mark.
No. It's a fascinating insight. Keep going, Sarah. It's good stuff.
So so the picture of me stood awkwardly by that table. It was on a trip to Gulf Food with Welsh food promotions. So that was with my food business, and that's something, if you have a kind of artisan or a food business, there's an awful lot of support out there for Welsh, I mean, and UK as well, but this is particularly a Welsh thing. And then just a kind of slightly novel one, that bottom right hand corner, I don't know if you can see those daffodils there.
I was wondering what they were.
It's actually a video clip, so it doesn't transfer very well to a still photo. But that's a project that has been run in Wales with a guy who's found a way of getting galanthamines from daffodil plants that can be used into an Alzheimer's drug. So that's something, just looking at kind of trials and things, that's something that he's working on to really try and see if that could become, well, it is a commercial reality, but to actually expand it. So that was just a little trial we did, as you can see, it's right on top of the mountain there. So I'd say a lot of this has come from, my husband and, always looking to see how you can actually get more value from the land you've got.
It's a lot of projects, and
it
must be a real family exercise, because you work as well off the farm. So gosh, you must have busy lives.
We do, and I would say one of the main diversifications we both have, me particularly, is that I don't work on the farm. I've always had a job off the farm because, you know, much like any farm business, and it's not my farm business, you know, the income isn't there to support lots of families. So it's something that my husband and I have always done, is have another job. I suppose what my role is, whilst being supportive, it's also trying to rein it in a little bit, because otherwise, as you can see, we end up with 1,500 projects, and you need to really focus on some of them and you know, make them work and not be doing too many different things.
Yes, yeah, no, I can imagine. Should we come back together again, just in case this
Stop sharing.
no one else can see that? That's great. Thank you for sharing that. You started to get into it there, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on what some of the key components of success were for you. You were mentioning there about you know, having work off the farm as perhaps one of those, but yeah, tell us a little bit about what were some of the key factors for success for you.
Well, I suppose I would say this from my personal experience when I ran my business, but also looking at other people's businesses and seeing what's successful for them. And it sounds really simple, and it always is when you've done it, but I think the key thing is to understand your costs, because you always look, and I'm guilty of this because, you know, I work in marketing, so I know the value of a lovely picture and selling the dream, but behind that dream is the reality of the day-to-day work. And unless you know your costs right from the outset, whatever diversification you do, you just don't have a hope. And it's really, and I say this myself because it's not my favorite thing, but it's kind of the boring research that really does make a business successful or not, or a diversification. And there are people out there that can help you with that if it's not your strong point. And I have to say, it's not my strong point. But you really need to understand what your cost of production is, whether that's a meat box scheme or a holiday cottage or a, you know, what you're always producing something, and you need to understand what is the cost of producing that, and then what is the cost that someone's going to pay for it. So is it a holiday? Is it a box of lamb? Is it your advice? And, you know, the bit in the middle is the profit. And that gives you an idea of whether or not that idea is a going concern, really. And it does sound really simple when you say it like that, but actually it is really hard to do. But the longer I do things like this and the more businesses I see, you understand that ultimately is the crux. You know, are you making more money than it is costing you to run whatever it is you're running?
Yeah.
Which is a bit of an oversimplification, I know, but that is what it's about, isn't it?
That's the bottom line, isn't it? And I guess as you get involved in these new ventures, they must throw up challenges as well. So how have you got any examples of how you've managed to work through those, how you've sort of dealt with those challenges and overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you start something, you know, you genuinely do have rose-tinted glasses on, even if you've done all that research and you feel all the figures add up. And as anyone knows that runs a business, you know, it's only when you actually do it that you realise some of the hiccups. And it depends a little bit on what type of business you're doing. You know, you think at the moment, you know, in the middle of COVID, if you were running a kind of a holiday let business or a kind of food business, you know, all those challenges that none of us could have predicted a year ago, that it's kind of that, it's like that plan B. You know, it's hard to think of all the risks, but that is one of the things about planning. You know, what is the worst thing that could go wrong? For a lot of the stuff we're involved with, particularly with renewables, where there's engineering or machinery or animals involved, you know, it's things breaking or equipment not performing or kit not talking to each other. And I would say that actually takes up a lot of time that you need to plan in as well, that you may not always think of that. So if you need to get a replacement part from Italy, you know, you've got to build that in. So I'd say it's about, you can't plan for everything, but you need to plan for the fact that things will go wrong, and how will you cope with them? You know, if your world falls apart at the first hiccup, probably looking at new diversifications may not be for you, because, you know, probably going to get a job somewhere else where the money comes in every month is perhaps maybe a safer option.
Indeed, yes. It's fascinating to see how you've managed to work through those challenges and develop those projects. You mentioned earlier that help is out there for people looking at diversification. Where did you go to get your help and information from when you started up?
Well, I suppose living in Wales, we're very fortunate really, because we're kind of inundated with support out there. So for particularly from the farming point of view, we've got people like Farming Connect that offer a big range of support. You know, AHDB, there's in England, Scotland, there are those support facilities out there. And then also, again, when I was doing the food business, there is support there for helping you set up new business. Not always financial. I think people often think, oh, there's some nice big pots of money out there, which is always welcome. But actually, good advice is probably more welcome, because if it's a good business plan, you know, hopefully you will make the money yourself, and the grant, whilst helping you get going, is not going to make a successful business. But some of that professional advice, and also I would say a lot that we do, you know, particularly my husband, he's an avid YouTube researcher on the internet. So if he's looking at a new piece of equipment or wanting to see something, he will research, he'll be looking on YouTube and Twitter. And that's something I've learned over the years, particularly through doing my Nuffield, is there is a wealth of information out there. You really need to know the right questions to ask, which is a crucial thing, but also perhaps ask the right people as well. Do you know anyone? Do you know anyone that's done this? Could you put me in touch with someone? And the more research you do at the early stages, the more it pays off in the long run. So yeah, so there are great, you know, people like Farming Community Network as well are just trying to put those networks in place to help you get started.
Thank you for the mention there, Sarah. So thinking about the future, how do you see things changing over the next few years for the farm?
I guess we're already on the journey of, you know, a long way down that diversification journey, and I can't see that changing at all. I think there's going to be some big changes, particularly in the farming industry. You know, we're all aware of that in both in Wales and in the rest of the UK, with the new report that came out with elms. I suppose as a farm, we see that as a potential opportunity. Obviously, we need to know more detail, and that's one thing we all want, is the detail. But I think we will try to take those opportunities if we can, particularly on the public goods front, whether or not we fit. And I think the other big thing that we would be looking at is to improve our efficiency on the farm. You know, some farms are very efficient anyway, and they might feel, you know, they haven't got much room to improve. But one thing for us that has made a massive difference is that rotational grazing and getting more feed value. And that's something that we've very much had support from Farming Connect, a scheme that they've done in Wales. And that's really helped us from a knowledge perspective to get us going. And I think it's just that about looking at your assets, whether your assets are a farm, whether they are people, whether your assets is you going to get a job off the farm, and making your farming system more simple, so you do it more of a weekend activity. But I guess it's about being realistic about where you want to go in the future, and kind of having a plan, I suppose, of how you're going to get there, and kind of trying to hope you vaguely stick to it.
Indeed. And for anyone watching this, Sarah, who might be thinking about starting up a project, looking at diversification, what would be your message to them?
I suppose back to what I said at the beginning, really do your research. I mean, I can't say enough how important that is. Really look at your costs, and just, you know, try and get as much support as you can. It is out there. Sometimes it's quite hard to find where to get it, but you just have to keep asking and keep knocking on those doors, and eventually you kind of probably get the person that says, oh, you need to talk to Mark or Sarah or whoever, and then it becomes a lot easier because you've suddenly accessed that world. But yeah, really, I think if you want to stay in farming and you feel that it's not quite working at the moment, diversification is one option for you. But it has to be the right diversification, because there's always people that say, oh, just do a holiday cottage or just do this. But that might only be in their situation, because everyone's different. So you have to find what works for you, your family, your situation, and then, you know, really go into it in detail.
That's great advice. And thank you, Sarah. It's been really interesting to hear about your diversification and your farming business. Just finally, I wonder if I could ask you what you feel about projects like this between Focus Farmers, Nuffield and FCN, designed to help the farming community plan ahead and think about the future, perhaps particularly at this time for the industry.
I think, I mean, I know Farming Community Network because one of my Nuffield's contemporaries is in it, so I know them well. But I really do think that the kind of services that charities like yourself offer are invaluable in such a period of change for the farming community and the rural community. So I think the more that we can do to promote what's available and the support, and really, I know it's a very fashionable word, but, you know, help build that resilience, the better, really. So, you know, I don't feel I'm any expert at all, but anything that I can do to help, or, you know, Nuffield can do, and the farming community, I think it's a great project, and you know, keep doing it.